What's the most uncomfortable situation you've ever had to sit through? We were getting internet installed when I moved to the town I live in. I was 16 at the time. I had surgery the day before and was bleeding slightly off and on and kept a hand in my pants to prevent the material from sticking to my wound. Anyway, I thought the internet maintenance guy had left. I went to the living room and turned on the TV. It immediately was on some kid's show. He walked back into the room and saw me with my hands in my pants. In his view, it could only possibly look like I was touching myself to kids' shows. The silence was horrible as he slowly crept back out of the room. I was visiting my cousin's house. For some reason, her mum was asking her about her childhood and if she had any trauma or something like that. What followed was my cousin low-key trauma dumping while clearly still mad at my aunt for some parenting failures. Both were trying to stay polite-ish, but dear God, it was so tense and awkward. I kept deflecting just about anything the cousin said too. Couldn't really leave the room because cousin was blocking the only exit. Afterwards, Aunt asked me if I had any grievances. I kept my mouth shut. At church, 4th of July, and our pianist who thought she could sing she couldn't sing Lee Greenwood's "I'm Proud to Be an American" in the most god-awful high-pitched voice for the entire song. She was using head voice the entire time for those in the know. My husband and I were literally sitting there in shock. Heads bowed, totally embarrassed with second-hand embarrassment for her. This was about 20 years ago, and we still talk about it around the 4th of July to this day. Had to be the longest few minutes of our lives. On the first day of school, I'd been told that there was a new student from China who barely spoke any English. Someone pointed him out to me, and I went up to him and very slowly said hi. How was the plane ride here from China in my most friendly voice? The whole room went quiet, and the guy, who was Asian American, had lived in America all his life and spoke perfect English, said, "Dude, what the fuck, how racist are you?" It was only then that I considered the possibility I may have been pointed towards the wrong person. Not me, but a friend who worked in tech support. A client complains that whenever the phone on her desk rings, weird character strings appear on her screen. He goes over there. She uses a basic landline and a word processor. No connection between the two. Then, while he is there, her phone rings. She reaches over to it, leaning her huge bosom over the keyboard, and of course, a string of characters begins to populate the word processor window. He had to explain it to her. I did jury service, and I sat on a case about a guy who murdered his partner and dismembered her body. Lee thought it was a theft case, but little did I know. The case was quite graphic, and I remember thinking, how can someone do such a thing? Yet whenever I looked at him, his lack of remorse gave it away. Eventually he confessed and gave a rather graphic description of the events. Suffice it to say, that has remained with me for the past 10 years. I was at a wedding, and the best man went off the rails during his speech at the reception. It was your stereotypical drunken rambling. But it was the guy's second marriage, so he was talking about his first wife and how he's good at most things except relationships, etc. People were audibly groaning and booing the guy and telling him to sit down. It was a truly Michael Scott moment, so awkward. CH in front of everyone, including our bosses. She started talking about how stressful the job was. Didn't get much support. Wasn't able to take proper breaks. And that no job is worth the mental stress. Needless to say, the room fell in awkward silence and our boss's face looked uncomfortable. In college, I lived really close to my grandparents' house, so they gave me a key and told me to stop on by any time. Don't worry about calling, so I did. My grandma was giving my grandpa ABJ in the living room. I always call now. It's been 10 years. My grandma's favorite marriage advice is to keep it spicy. More power to them, I guess, but I'll never get that image out of my head. I have an eye condition that requires steroid injections into the eye sockets below and behind the eyeballs for treatment. It improves my eyesight, but only temporarily. I have had them for decades, and AS so uncomfortable in the last few years I have opted to not get them overseeing somewhat better. Just our lead valet a hothead, and the security guy all have an escalated argument while an event went outside. They both had a valid point, but it was just ugly. Our team's 7 guys just had to stand around and do that look at the floor shuffle. Having my friend's mom drive me back to my parents after we totaled said friend's car ripping it around through a cornfield. She couldn't even form full sentences. She just kept repeating different iterations of ... What were you thinking? I had multiple outings with my closest friend in college, and I kind of wanted to die during those. And I made it out alive and learned that I wasn't interested in doing that stuff eventually. After many stomachaches and anxiety attacks, couples counseling while going through my divorce. Complete waste of fucking time and money. I think if we had a better therapist it might have been worthwhile. But the one we were court-ordered to use was dog shit. A guy offered to walk me home from an event when I had found out barely an hour ago that he sexually assaulted another student. Got the fuck right out of there. Got a ride from some nice girls instead. My drunk sister starting a fight with her BF, tried to get him to hit her for threatening to call the cops, and proceeding to smash her own head against the wall to make it look like he did. My friend telling me how shitty his relationship was becoming and wanting to end it moments before his girlfriend texted me for advice on how to tell him she was pregnant. I was in jail transport with a dude that stunk and was ridiculously cringe. We were separated together in a square meter cell for 12 hours, watching some psychopath beat his dog. I'm an animal lover and wanted to stop him, but we were in his house and he was armed, helping my friend pack up her stuff when leaving her husband, while he sat on the couch and cried.